Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Patricia Wakefield of Ludlow is making headlines for causing a commotion in civil court today. Miss Wakefield was suing her neighbors, native Ludlow residents, for accidentally killing her pet tortoise. The case was dismissed when the accused arrived with the tortoise alive. Miss Wakefield left in a wake of tears and confusion, telling reporters she had no idea how such a thing could be possible. It's the Micmac Paddywhack. They bring your pets back home. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, CM Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And Eve Gatto.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are covering something we've already covered. I didn't think about like a fun way to bring this in. We're calling it Revisited. It is a Patreon perk, and Revisited is us revisiting a book that we have already covered. But it's not going to be like, we're not going to just talk about the same crap we talked about last time. By the way, if you want to hear that crap and you haven't heard it already, check out those episodes.
We are
Early eps for
we are
us.
taking one of our favorite books and bringing it back from the dead to talk all over again.
There it is.
Yeah, you did it, Eve. Thank you. Okay, so we are covering Pet Sematary, and Josh is leading us through the discussion. And we also, it's book and movie, just to point that out.
Absolutely. And thank you, and fuck you to Tony Horseman for the selection. We've been blessing and cursing you the entire time.
So aggressive.
Yeah, I know. It's fine. We email. All right. This was the very first book on our show that we
That's
all
not
read.
true. We did Carrie.
That we all
started
read
with
for the
Carrie.
very first time together.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. Have either of you read or watched it since?
No.
Absolutely not. I'm too busy watching all the other crap we're being watched.
You think I have time to read other books?
Have you?
No, I swore that I would be interested in reading it once I became a parent, because we read this book 5 years ago. I was not a dad at the time.
Goodness,
I'm
that's a long time
sorry.
ago.
Oh my.
A lot changed for me. So this was also what makes it a very interesting book to be chosen for Revisited, because it's one that I wanted to, but also didn't want to.
Yeah.
And now I had to. And I'm so glad I did. I love this fucking book.
Oh, I didn't know if we were going to save it because I don't want to spoil our final. I guess we're going to re-rate it. Is that how this works?
We'll end up
This is all
re-rating it.
new
that'll be
territory
valuable.
for us, y'all. I didn't know if we were saving it. Pet Sematary is King's best book. I'm throwing it down. I've always said, people ask me kind of a lot what my favorite King book is, and I always have the hardest time deciding between The Shining and Pet Sematary, and like a dozen others, but that's beside the point. And I think after having reread through this, knowing what to expect, I'm sure we talked about in our first episodes that we kind of like knew what the gist of the story was, but knowing exactly what we were in for makes it so much worse.
Also,
Yes.
it moving quickly makes it worse because the way we do our episodes, they're bi-weekly, so we have about 2 weeks to absorb the material. And we did the whole book in a 2-week period. And so my brain for this read through was making connections that I didn't quite make last time, or I didn't make as like concisely. It wasn't as fleshed out in my head because there was so much time and just like diving into specific sections of the book that I'm like, oh, wow, I think I might have wondered about that. And it is very clear now, kind of absorbing it at once. So that was cool.
There are full conversations that I want to talk about because I feel like I missed them entirely on my first read. So we're gonna break this down a little bit. I would call it breaking this book down into a 5-act structure, but it's more like 5 arbitrary points I decided to break the story up in.
Sure.
So I want to first talk about from beginning to Thanksgiving to before church dies.
Okay.
That's kind of where I want to get to first. And the first thing I want to go to is Eve. We were very hard on Lewis.
I knew this was going to be the first thing we talked about.
It had to be. We were extremely hard on Lewis at the very
recently
beginning.
asked me about this by coincidence. They were going back through these episodes, and they're like, "Why did they hate Lewis so much?" And I'm like, "That was 5 years ago. I don't know."
Honest to God, having read this, that was like one of the first things on my mind, and I want to apologize to Lewis Creed. I think
formally,
Lewis, he's such a fucking fascinating character. He's so real. He is so fully fleshed out as a human. Like he's a complicated guy, and he has.
We're seeing every thought, good and bad, and that's not like it's easy to judge that.
Yeah, I thought this time through, knowing him as a fully fledged character, it was much easier to be like, oh yeah, he's going through a move. That's stressful. Like, come
I feel
on.
like that we've been easier on people. We've been more understanding lately. This is a soft Derry. We are a flaccid podcast this year.
Well, in regards to our limpness, I think that it stems from the fact that listening to us talk about the book, it was in I think 24 through 27, 28 is around the range that we were in. And at least for me, because I had the most limited King knowledge, I think that I didn't realize, very basic writing, first person, third person, like we know these are the way the stories are told. My brain hadn't quite acknowledged the difference that Stephen King doesn't always write a first person story the same way. Like, for instance, Lewis, we're getting warts and all, we're getting all his innermost terrible thoughts, where sometimes we follow protagonists that we do get their internal monologues, but we don't get those deeper negative things.
Yeah, it's not the whole picture. It's just the stuff to make them the protagonist.
We talked about this with Edgar Fremantle in Duma Key in regards to how he remembers his marriage or how that the unreliable narrator of it all.
Yeah, Johnny Marinville.
Yes,
yeah,
great example.
Like his inner monologue is all, boy, I'm great, but he's actually kind of shitty and hates himself.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Lewis Creed is a very, they say it at the beginning of the book, he is kind of a methodical, even-keeled dude at the beginning of the story. And I think that comes through in the way he thinks about stuff. He is just a very earnest person who sometimes he's like, yeah, I get fucking annoyed with my kids sometimes. But how relatable is that, Josh?
It's just hard. It's hard to see those uncharitable thoughts so early because we don't know him well enough to give him the grace you would. Like, Josh, if you were like, man, my baby's just pissing me off today, I'd be like, oh, yeah. I would be like, well, you must be an asshole for thinking that.
But if it was the first thing I said to you the first time we met,
I'd be like, that guy hates his kid.
Hi, pleased to meet you. I hate my children.
Hey, how's it going? My kid's driving me fucking wild. I did make a note that I'm going crazy. I went, yep, I get it. This is just the other day, my daughter and I were playing Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is a game where I chase her around the yard stomping like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I assume.
Well, I'm chasing.
I wanted the reverse, to be honest.
I'm trying to catch and eat her and her pet unicorn. So it's a true caveman story. And I have a metal swing in my backyard, and she tripped, ate shit, hit her mouth right on the metal.
No.
Like, all it was, thank God, was just a split lip.
Yeah.
But split lips, man, mouth fills with blood.
Yeah.
My brain went
And
into
it
a
hurts.
full And the way, from my angle, I thought I was gonna see a broken nose. I thought that was how she hit. I was my panic went so high, and I scooped her up, ran inside, and because I couldn't find the specific, her ice things that she would chew on when she was teething. We still have those. I wanted to put that on her lip because I couldn't find the one in my mind's eye I was looking for. I thought, I'm going crazy. It's so relatable now.
Yeah, no, it's really the only thing in this beginning section that made me go, okay, fuck you, man, was when Ellie falls down and he uses the mercurochrome on it. And he does this, like, see, and it didn't even fucking hurt at all. And I'm like, fuck you. Listen to children when they say they're in pain.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, you put it that way.
Yeah. But really, this beginning segment, it really just paints them as a very cute, nice family.
Yeah.
I had forgotten too how much the beginning part really keeps hammering home the fact that when Judd and Lewis meet, that sees him as a father figure, and how important that relationship is in that dynamic. Like I forgot about the father angle a little bit, just how that played out.
What did you guys think of getting to we don't get her in any other adaptation, getting to see Norma again?
Yeah. Norma's great.
I forget about her. And then when she's back on the page, I was so excited.
It's weird. I have the opposite problem where I forget she's only in the book. And so I keep putting her as like, it's weird they haven't had Norma come out yet. But, she's in this. And then I was like, oh, no, wait, it's the remake she's in.
And then I had to burst your poor little bubble.
Yeah, I love Norma, though she's there. I love that Norma and Judd are like this couple. There's that. I understand why she's not in the adaptations, but there's this added layer of complication because he's not a bachelor. And I think it gives more weight to the idea that, of the book, that men have secrets too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like whores.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Whores also have secrets.
That part fucking jump scared me again this read through. I was like, oh, right. What the fuck?
Judd loves whores.
But yeah, I think having Norma there is a great way to parallel him and Lewis and how they react to their loss, where it makes it make more sense when Gage dies and Judd shows up and is like, I know what you're fucking thinking, man. You think I didn't think that? But you can't. This is a step too far.
I always wonder, okay, no, I lied. I wonder now, having read this again, much quicker, watched the movie immediately, so there's not like a month and a half time between reading it and watching the movie. People who just see the movie, do they get all the nuance? Because I found myself, it's a good movie, I love it.
It's great.
But I found myself missing like what you just said about that, showing us a lot about how each of them handle grief and their relationships and kind of keeping these secrets from their spouses. Does the movie do a good enough job conveying all of that subtext in the movie? Now that's all subtext.
It's I don't know,
I don't know either.
we were watching it, and of course
we were reading all the emotion into it that wasn't on the screen too.
Like we're chatting about, oh man, this movie's so fucking great. I look it up and find out it has a Metacritic score of like 38. I was like, how is that possible? And it has to be that like this is just a movie. It's one of those rare adaptations where I don't think it is better or worse than the source material. It is completely complementary to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I could see, if you hadn't read the book, seeing the guy that plays Lewis's portrayal as very Wood.
Right.
Instead of being, having just finished the book like an hour before we watched the movie, seeing that as the like dead-eyed shell shock of...
To be fair, he did have a lot of dead eye before he had a reason to. But I think, to what you're saying, having just read the book, I can kind of like retroactively I already feel grief and sorrow for Lewis. So even
yeah.
though in the movie nothing bad has happened yet, I'm like, yeah, no wonder he's just staring blankly at his wife.
Yeah, this book is a fucking car crash.
Yeah, it is.
It
It
hurts.
is. And I listened to the I listened to the audiobook at 2 times speed because it's very long and I forgot to listen to it.
That never happens.
When would that ever? Actually, it's really funny. For a brief time, I considered coming into this podcast having not read it at all and just seeing how long I could fake
Oh my
remembering
God.
what happened in
Oh,
the book.
no.
And so, but then I remembered that someone paid for us to do that. So I
Oh,
did read
yeah,
it.
good.
And I'm glad that I did.
Is it not as sad that fast? Because I'm going through something that I wasn't going through before, and I hated reading this because it just made me even more depressed because I couldn't escape into anything positive or good. It's still really great, but ow.
Yeah. I will say that it once I had gotten used to the speed, it was great. And at a certain point, I turned it back to 1.0 speed just for the heck of it, and immediately had to change it back because the guy reading
Michael C. Hall.
Michael C.
Love
Hall,
him.
who is great and does a great job, but the way he reads Judd Crandall's lines is so slow.
It is slow.
It sounded like listening to the book in slow motion, and I had to be like, no, this has to be faster. Let's pick it up.
Now, before we move on to our next topic, Eve, I need you to give me a noun and a verb ending in ing.
Well, the noun is obviously slime.
Good,
And
good.
verb ending in ing is grinding.
Perfect. CM, I need a place and a body part.
Ooh, a spaghetti house. And an eyeball.
Eyeball. Perfect. Thank you.
I'm hungry.
I never would have guessed that was what was going to come out of your mouth in a million years. I'm so happy about it.
But CM, what I'd like to come out of your mouth is your thoughts on the death conversation, because when we first read this book, we didn't know the depths of Rachel's her
Phobia.
response to death, saying it's unnatural.
Yeah.
Even I also gave her a lot of shit for saying that it's not natural. Now that we know truly how bad it was, how did this conversation play for you both?
Spaghetti is like death. And your life, or like all your life events, are these noodles.
Yeah,
And eventually they get all tangled up together, and then you put meat sauce on them.
Hashtag deep.
And you eat them.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he asked a question. I thought it was related to
No,
the previous
fully fresh,
thing. Okay.
fresh
okay.
topic.
I thought a lot about this because I was getting frustrated with her, with the way she was handling it, especially, the Ellie of it all. And I didn't give her as much grace as she deserved, because even though I did know everything, it wasn't until we got to the part where she was telling Lewis that her parents left her a child alone with her sick sister. And that was at this point too, we got the whole thing. See, it's a benefit of it all being like digested very quickly instead of over the course of a month or whatever. But we got the whole thing about them splurging and buying all these outfits for the kids, and Lewis is upset about that. And it's like, oh yeah, they could afford in-home care or someone to be there 24/7 with Zelda, and they left Rachel there. And so then
Well, it was Passover. I love that that's her excuse she makes for her parents.
Yeah.
I agree. This read through had so much more sympathy for both of the creeds and hated Rachel's dad.
Erwin?
Yes.
Yeah. Fuck
So
him.
much
So much.
more. Because, and the way that he writes Rachel, I think is amazing, because the first time, it's still, when she has her first like breakdown and says death is not natural, you're still like, that's an insane thing to say.
You're married to a doctor.
Yeah, that is a obviously crazy response. But the phobic, like her phobic brain just being unable to even think about death.
She saw a very unnatural death too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it just makes the whole situation that much sadder. And it makes, once she does recognize, like, okay, yeah, I overreacted to this, and here's why. You're like, oh fuck. It's a very sympathetic story. And the way she justifies her like own guilt and all of that is so real. And so, like, yeah, of course she's been holding this in her whole life. And I'm glad, like, the talk that they have feels very cathartic. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh,
It's
good.
heartbreaking though, because even in the talk, she's blaming herself. And Lewis is the one to recognize, like, your parents should not have left you alone with
Yeah.
her, and that she doesn't think about that. And so it's like bittersweet too, because like you feel sympathy for her, but you're like, wow, you haven't even begun to uncover why this was so traumatizing, and that's gonna suck for a long time.
It's also wild that they've been together so long and never talked about it.
Yeah.
Going back to, because I was looking at my notes. Oh, speaking of which, Sam, give me 2 nouns.
I have school brain.
You're getting a PhD right now.
Not in nouns.
That's good.
Good.
A boat. I already said spaghetti. Why
You
did
can
I
say it
blow
again.
spaghetti the first time?
Get
God,
this girl some spaghetti.
I had spaghetti in the cannon and I used it too early. We've all been there.
I'm gonna when it comes back to me, I'm gonna have the same problem with slime.
A kite.
Oh,
Oh, come on. I can't even say kite, and you guys get sad now.
the last
Kites
moment
have
of
been
happiness
ruined.
Lewis Creed's
Oh.
life.
Eve, I need a past tense verb and a name.
Spanked.
Good.
Stephen King.
All right. On the topic of losing Norma, a thought that I had that I forgot to get out was, I think something that it costs the movie is that Judd being driven to do the good deed when church is hit is driven by Halloween, when Norma has a heart attack and he's right there helping. And that's part of what makes Judd's story so complicated. Is he says later, we will make all sorts of sweet reasons to do it that made sense at the time when we know we shouldn't have. And in the movie, it feels more flippant, because it's almost he basically says, your daughter's not ready for her favorite cat to die yet, and maybe she will be when that time comes. And in the book, he says something similar to that line, but it's so much deeper because he knows from experience what is going to happen.
I think I was a little more critical of the movie while watching it, coming off the book. So fresh.
Because it's such a good adaptation.
Well,
you kind of nitpick a little bit.
Well, it's just because I don't know. I wanted more of, and I can't remember if I had a similar feeling before, but I just wanted a little more of the relationship, because it is a good enough adaptation that I wanted to see them have more. I think they would have done a good job.
How much time do you feel passes in the movie?
Only because of how they showed, the like Ellie putting up the different holiday decorations to show the seasons passing. It felt like a couple of months.
Yeah,
Like three or 4 months. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, looks a little colder out. They dress a little warmer, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, because I feel like that also is, and again, film, you're obviously going to squeeze everything in, but I think that that length of time they live there and have all of that, they create normal family memories all together. The Crandalls and the Creeds.
Lewis having beer with Judd on the porch. Like, I guess
Small
I just
thing, yeah.
wanted I just wanted a scene of them doing that, like a little more of that.
If they'd had a scene that showed him coming over and really showed how routine it was,
Yes,
I think
that's what I wanted. Yeah.
would have gotten me just over that part of the hump. But yeah, it feels forced, Judd's reasoning, whereas let's talk about something that we did not talk a lot about in our first read through, and that is, Eve, give me an emotion.
Horny.
CM, an emotion?
Extra horny.
Happy.
The Wendigo, because as we were all reading this the first time, we didn't understand the Wendigo or what sort of influence
is this
it
a
had.
separate thought once again?
Oh, no, I was pausing to get those things. Now I'm back in the thought.
Oh, okay.
It's seamless. I'm a professional. So I want to talk about the Wendigo because we spent no time talking about it.
Yes.
We didn't
Really?
Hardly, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
we
so
kinda
much
glanced on-
story to talk about.
And we kept kind of referring to the pop culture nomenclature by saying the force of the pet cemetery did this. No, it's the Wendigo. I know. Now
the Wendigo's like the coolest part of the book.
Yeah, but we touched at what we thought its influences were. But now that we have read the whole story, experienced it, did you catch things earlier this time?
Yes.
How do you feel about the effect of the Wendigo from the night of church dying?
That was one of the biggest things that struck me reading it more quickly, I guess, that there were so many little, like, there's a lot of foreshadowing, just the way Judd would phrase something that you might not catch about his motivations. And so you're seeing all of these things and like so scared for Lewis because you're like, oh, listen to what he's telling you, man. This is really bad. Just that it's like that influence is there from the beginning. Because I'm sure we talked about Judd, later on when Gage dies, taking blame for that. It was the power of the thing that pulled me. And, that's what happened to Stanny B, the guy who showed me, and kind of explains that, but you don't see that as well when you take your time with it.
Yeah. I underestimated the force, I guess. I wasn't sure if this force we were talking about was folklore or a real thing. And so the moment for me was when they are standing there before Judd goes inside to get the stuff, before he's even told them where they're going with church, and Lewis feels content.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't have normal reactions to
interesting.
Judd doing this.
And so that felt like the first influence that I caught.
See, the way I see it is I like to look at it as the Wendigo not necessarily being a literal thing, although we do see literal evidence of some huge terrifying thing in the woods. But I like it being this, like, it's not a literal monster that is trying to, or maybe it is.
I'm sorry. I gotta argue with you because I think it is, because the Wendigo possesses humans, and that's what, like, the cannibalism lore of the Wendigo story. That's kind of what that is all about. And I was thinking about this when Gage, this is jumping like way ahead to the end, dies again, and Lewis sees Gage behind the eyes from it, like whatever spirit was possessing him fled when he injected him. And so, and just thinking about like the spirit, Gage knows things too, like the people who come back know things, and we find out
when the spirit comes back. That's why I was like, wait, no, the thing I just said doesn't make any sense, is because when the spirit comes back in Gage and goes after Judd, he says, you fucked with me before. You thought I wasn't going to be back? But, like, I don't know that I feel like the Wendigo, the thing in the woods, is more like just a not a metaphor, but just like it is this, it's this thing that is bigger. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Are you in a hat on a hat scenario where it's the lore they're hanging this on, where like the Native Americans hanging it on the Wendigo when they had to resort to cannibalism for survival, they then excuse that by saying the Wendigo passed our village and touched us.
I think of it as like a spirit, if not necessarily a monster, if that makes sense. It's a real subtle distinction. And that
so I'm thinking about the movie Ravenous. Actually, that's all I can think about, because that's not an overt, but that is a story of the Wendigo and I guess I'm thinking, okay, the Indians they had to resort to cannibalism, and maybe they buried the individuals they ate in the burial ground, which is what turned the ground sour.
Mhm.
Also possible.
So it's getting kind of like wrapped up in the lore of the Micmac burial ground and the Wendigo. Like I had to find a way to connect them in my mind to make sense of like it did seem like you said, Josh, a second ago, like I had on a hat. But I think the Wendigo poisoned that ground, or what they did poisoned it, and it called forth that being or spirit or whatever it is, and it's just been possessing people
But
ever
also,
since.
is that burial ground in our world? We discussed the
Right,
thinny
yeah,
of Little
yeah.
God Swamp.
I'm gonna say no. Like I think crazy shit is not often in our world. I
And
think.
there's also that moment where Lewis is walking through it and being like, these plants
Yeah,
don't grow
Can't,
around
no.
here. I don't think they grow anywhere.
it's a Booyah Moon situation.
It describes a creature that reminded me of the bat from Buick 8 at one point.
I hate how much Buick 8, like
Really?
how much it has impacted our podcast.
Yeah.
We're like, this book
It's
sucks.
not a very
We're
good
gonna talk
book,
about it,
but it has
every
some cool
episode.
ideas.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so if the origin, the Micmac burial ground, was this Indian burial ground where cannibalism happened and they buried the people they ate, and then something bad happened and it became what we know now. Are the people that they ate the first things that rose from the burial ground? Because I want to see that movie.
That sounds rad as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all this tribe that had to resort to cannibalism, and they do this thing in their holy ground and it all goes wrong. And then the people that got eaten come back.
That
Mhm.
would be fucking cool. As
That would be
hell.
scary as shit.
I will also note that one thing that they didn't do in the movie, that Lewis later notes that up there at the Micmac burial ground, all the cairns are not stacked anymore. All the rocks are around, but no cairns are standing.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that because he's like, I don't know why I didn't see it before. I think they were always like that. I think when they went up the first time, he just didn't notice.
That's
He
what I
was
was
just
thinking.
like,
He just
oh,
didn't know
piles of
He
rocks.
didn't know
Yeah.
like what they were doing or where he was.
Yeah,
necessarily.
but I think when he realizes that they were all already broken out
Yeah.
of, and that's so cool.
It's really cool. I need an object.
GameCube.
Ooh, good pull. And CM, I need a body part.
Ankle.
I want to circle back to something that we talked
I'm
about.
so excited for whatever the fuck this is.
And it's something you brought up. This is jumping to the end, but
Mhm.
Gage tells Judd, "You fucked with me. You
Mhm.
didn't think I would fuck with you back." There's a difference.
And then My Little Buddy falls out of the attic.
There's a difference in the story of Timmy Baterman
Mhm.
Mm.
that we see it told in the movie and the way we see it told in the book. Next episode, we're going to be watching Bloodlines, which, as I understand it, is Judd's story.
Yeah, isn't it?
as-
Isn't it basically the story he tells
th-
Lewis like that time?
I think
Oh,
so.
is it?
I don't know for
I
sure.
know nothing
I hope,
about it.
I hope that that's the case because I'm excited to see if that will be the tiebreaker here.
Is that a movie or a show?
It's a movie.
Okay.
So in the movie, Judd and some people from town burn the house down with
Mhm.
Timmy and Bill Baterman still inside, and Timmy even drags his father further into the fire so
Mhm.
they can die. In the book, it's said that they all went over there, had their meeting with the devil,
Mhm.
left, and then when they next found out, the house had burned down, but it was determined that the father shot the kid and then set the fire, then killed himself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But Gage saying you fucked with me last time,
Mhm.
if all Judd did was show up, that doesn't sound like enough revenge. That doesn't sound like enough motivation for you fucked with me revenge.
I mean,
So I wonder
it's a
if
demon, so maybe just that he showed up and was like, you shouldn't exist.
They convinced the
be.
dad that enough that it was a bad idea that he made the decision to end it. Maybe that's. I like your idea. Like I see what
Yeah.
you mean. It would be cool to find out in Bloodlines that Judd kind of softened that story when he retold it
Yeah.
to Lewis.
according to the movie, he softened it since they
Yeah.
burned the place down. So I wonder If he was more involved, then he would like to talk about
I don't know. Judd is pretty open about his past dalliances.
He does only open up the new thing when there is a reason to add on. So we can't say he's always been completely forthcoming.
That's fair.
Hey, men have their secrets.
That's true. Also, a small detail, when they go to Derry Church, I love the way that Lewis watches Judd walk over the deadfall, and the description of watching Judd climb the deadfall is eerily similar to the description of Gage running into the road, where it's they should fall at any second. They are moving with a speed and grace they would not normally move. I just thought that was
because earlier
really
didn't
interesting.
did he say he moved like a younger guy?
Before
Like at the
this?
very, very beginning.
When he
of
pulls
the
the
book.
The great
stinger out.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I made a note that after Church does die, he imagines the phone call with Ellie, and it says, quote, "He got hit by an Orinco truck. Somehow I'm absolutely positive it was an Orinco truck. Anything else would lack dramatic unity." Fuck you. It hurt. It hurt so bad.
It's wild to me. I don't know if we talked about it the first time that we read this, but the audiobook has a little foreword by Stephen King where so much of the things in this book are just things that happened to Stephen King.
Makes it even more horrifying.
That the first name of a cat on the pet cemetery that they go to, I forget what
Smucky?
Smucky was his daughter's cat who died the way that Church did by getting hit by an Orinoco flow truck. And like they lived in a house with a creepy pet cemetery close by.
That's amazing.
And his son almost ran into that scene. The whole book came out of this thing that happened, and then Stephen King went, "What if?" and wrote this book.
And then
That's
was like,
terrifying.
"Oh, I shouldn't have written this. So I'm going to put it away." And then Tabitha was like, "Nah, you got to publish it."
It's pretty good.
And they were both right.
Yup.
Before we move on, CM, I need a plural noun.
Books.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I'm just naming things I see.
How you do it?
Spaghetti.
Eve, I need a body part.
Solar plexus.
Nice.
Oh, are we done with the Wendigo part? I was going to close my notes on that because I had some tabs open on some stuff. On some Wendigo stuff. Don't look at my Wendigo tabs.
Oh, don't look at my tabs. Stop peeking at my tabs.
Oh, those tabs are private. Don't look at my search history. It's all Wendigo.
Rule 34, Wendigo.
Oh, no. Oh, Eve, don't
you ever
do that.
searched Wendigos on Pornhub?
No.
Let's do it as a group. No,
group icebreaker.
That's why we're not allowed to do team building exercises anymore.
Yeah.
We got kicked out of the library. All right, let's get to we've buried Church. The family is back together. Gage returns very sick from the trip. CM, have you said pretty and then thrown up in the last 5 years?
No, I've not remembered to do that. Dang it.
And my other follow-up question is, why have we not flown a kite as a family yet?
Because we're going to die if we do. Who's going to die, Josh?
I don't know. That's part of the fun.
Not the Gage of the podcast.
Damn it.
We should really need cameras on us sometimes.
Doing a nose goes live on podcast is
riveting.
Right, yeah. And I'll also point out that we did talk about giving Lewis shit earlier, but Eve, you said in part 2 that Lewis is one of the most real and complex protagonists we've ever had.
Yeah, I said that earlier this episode.
You did.
So
You are consistent.
I'm a genius. Speaking of Lewis Creed, CM, you asked if Lewis Creed seemed hotter this time?
It's because we're watching in 4K. And the answer is yes. Right?
I don't know.
I don't know. He was a little more like kind of chiseled. He had more contrast. It's like dark hair.
A little hairy for me. Is that too personal?
Oh, this is jumping back a minute, but I mentioned earlier that there were conversations that I feel like I full on missed. And on the walk to Barry Church, they have a conversation where Lewis shares that when he feels great, that he understands the feeling and compares it to heroin. It feels good, but it's poisoning you. And he thinks this place is a little like that. And I completely missed that my first read through, but it's such a small hint at the addiction through line of once you know the place, it is your secret, you feel compelled.
The compulsion is so upsetting. This is
It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
After the funeral, when Judd comes to him and says, I know what the fuck you're thinking. You can't think it at all. And of course, at the moment, Lewis is saying, well, fine. Yeah, obviously, I wasn't actually thinking about it. I never would. And the next day, when people are like, Lewis, you seem a little out of it. And he says, they wouldn't have known, not even Judd would probably have known that in his mind, he had started thinking out the strategy for grave robbing. And I'm like,
this part made me so sad because it was harder to read for some reason this time, just about how he, in his mind, and maybe I said this before, but he's already like, oh, I'm not grieving with my family because I'm going to fix this. And so he can't be there for Rachel and Ellie. And everybody else sees that. Like Steve gets irritated with them. Like, hey, man, comfort your wife. And he's like, no, it's going to be good. I got something even better. Don't worry.
It's Disneyland.
The number of times that he, either through his own thought process or someone else, it reaches out to him and says, come grieve with us. It's gonna suck and it's going to be hard, but we need you here with us. And how often he sees it and is like, yeah, that sounds great. Obviously the right choice. And yet he at no point does not know I'm going through with this.
I didn't realize the first time through also the burden of knowledge Lewis has in regards to after death. He's a doctor. We know he understands death, but the summer with his undertaker uncle and the conversations like when he calls about Pascal's body and the guy's very like, yeah, we tossed him on the train. It is very callous about the treatment of the dead body. He thinks about the cotton in Gage's mouth is going to be turning black by now.
Yeah, applying what he knows to his own child.
So much. And that didn't sink in with me my first read. And I feel like it doubled the weight of anticipating, because it comes up so long before Gage dies that I'm just like, he knows all of this.
It's, even though when you reread this book, it's never going to be as surprisingly like grief-inducing as the first time, but it's bad in a different way because you are just waiting and anticipating. After there's at the point in the book where all the just horrible shit happens and the fight with the father-in-law and everything, and Lewis then is like, oh, but all of that was a dream. I grabbed him just in time. And I had forgotten that the book did that.
It is like getting kicked in the stomach.
And I wanted to message you guys and say, I'm stopping here. This is where the book ends for me. I don't have the mental fortitude to deal with this anymore. So it's interesting just, reflecting on rereading it. I should have saved this for the ratings, but whatever. It's still as upsetting, just in a anticipatory way rather than a surprising way.
It's like I said, it is a long slow motion car crash where you are seeing Lewis make every single wrong choice. Watching everyone make the wrong choice. When seeing Judd the first time being like, okay, we're doing this, and you're like, fucking no, why? And it's having the answer be because they're men with a secret and they gotta spread it. It's like, it's devastating.
Also realized more this time watching the movie and thinking about the remake, and that was more focused on the women in the story, that I don't know, it's just like this is all, it's all the men in the town. Like,
Mhm.
we never hear about, except for Norma in the
Norma.
book, we never really hear about anyone else. It's like men sharing secrets, keeping secrets, doing secretive things.
And then not taking that pain and that knowledge to their family
Mhm.
where they could do healing. But no, they have
No,
to
they
keep it to
destroy it.
themselves.
They destroy themselves.
Yes, they have to keep it
Yeah.
in their own stony hearts
Mhm.
and not admit, hey,
I'm hurting.
I'm hurting.
Hmm.
Eve, I need another, both of you actually, a verb ending in ing.
Flying.
Barfing.
2 nouns.
Rabbit. Rabbit. I don't know why I said that like I was in a rush. Like, oh, I hope Eve doesn't take mine. I can only think of one noun.
A noun?
Mhm.
A bowl of Captain Crunch cereal.
We talked before that in the episodes, I listened back to them, and we had discussed moments we all were crying, and CMU had to be physically hugged by your husband and told they weren't real people. I will say, the only time that I put the book down and full on cried was after the kite, the last good day.
Yeah.
Because I knew what was coming, and it broke me 10 times harder.
It was hard to get through it a second time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Be in an emotionally healthy place, listeners, when you read this.
Yes.
Even if you've already read it.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself, then get sad.
Let's talk about Gage's funeral and how much we hate Erwin.
Holy shit. See, of all the stuff this time around, it's all deeply sad. Didn't get any tears out of me this time.
Yeah?
But this fucking scene was hard for me to get through.
I'd rather hang out with the Wendigo than Erwin.
It made me so unbelievably angry.
Like
So
seeing
fucking
red.
mad.
Like
Yeah.
legitimately
Yes, like angry at
in real
someone
life.
who's not a real
If
person.
you get angry in the book, you get angry in real life.
Yeah.
And I love the scene though.
Yeah.
Like the way he describes everything is so, like, Lewis is so dulled to everything, and everything is just so matter of fact. And when he snaps, when Erwin comes over and is like, I told my daughter that I knew that this is, this is what she gets for running off with you. And he's like, what? You said that to her? And when he goes to punch him and he's just like, it's happening before I realize. And he's like, he sees his cufflink in the slow motion of his arm shooting out. I believe my favorite part is he says, my fist was just a thing on the end of my arm.
Yeah.
It's so depersonalized and yet completely devastating to have this horrible family tragedy playing out at a fucking child's funeral.
Mhm. Also, the fact that it's the second visitation got me this time around.
Yeah.
Because I forgot he had to go through it twice.
Yeah,
Why?
after him
Don't do it
getting
twice.
fucking cold shouldered.
Yeah.
I hate this guy. And it makes the follow-up scene even more devastating. That scene got me this time.
The phone call.
When he talks to him on the phone.
Yeah.
That part fucked me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they have this blow up, and Lewis at this point is already dead inside. Like he's done. He knows what is going to happen, even if he's trying to convince himself. These are just, I'm just having thoughts. Whatever.
Yeah. Purely academic.
But then when it gets to he has made the plan, he is sending Rachel and Ellie off to Chicago. And Erwin calls him and has a very sincere, like, thank you. I'm so sorry. And the way he reacts, where his brain is like, no, fuck him. Fuck, he's being real. Like, this is real. He's trying to be emotional, and I can't deal with it because if I listen to it, I will give in, and then I have to accept the reality of my son's death.
Yeah. And he can grieve with people, and then it's like you just so badly want him to make a different choice.
The opportunity for the happy ending is right there.
Yeah.
The person that stood in the way of the complete happiness of his family finally getting hammered and eating shit could have been the open door, but
it's devastating. Yeah. How fucking cruel is this book? It doesn't just have the audacity to kill a child in a gruesome way, that it then the rest of the book is just the slow dissolution of a family. It's fucking this book. I need a nap.
I want to talk about an unsung hero, Steve Masterton, because for my money, he's in the running for the Big Steve Award this year.
Absolutely.
Because we didn't have it back when he was...
That's right.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this character barely at all in our actual episodes. He was one of my favorites in this read through. He is amazing.
He's a great guy to have around during a tough time.
And I guess because I knew he'd be important, it stuck out from the first moment he was mentioned, as opposed to, and sometimes when we get King books, we realize that some names are just not going to matter.
Yeah.
But I got more invested in that relationship than I had the first time. And just the way he shows up and takes care of the family while Lewis is
He'll hug your wife.
Oh. Yeah.
I have that on my business cards too.
I'll hug your wife.
I'm a dynamite hugger. Ask anybody's wife.
It's weird. Only wives.
Yeah, well, I know my audience. CM, give me a name.
Anna.
And one more verb ending in ing.
Spinning.
Eve, one more noun?
Don't worry, I'm looking around the room in desperation.
More books.
Yeah, more books. No,
Jean-Luc.
Hey, I was just about to say a Jean-Luc Picard action figure.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Right, high stakes now. I don't know what you're doing all this for, but you better respect the captain.
Oh my god. And I will say that you did call it an action figure.
Yes, a Jean-Luc Picard action figure.
He's not a doll.
No.
He's not real.
Look at all his points of articulation.
36 points of articulation.
Ooh, that's a good number of points of articulation.
I'll articulate those points all day.
Guys.
Speaking of grave robbing, the scene where Lewis does the deed, I noticed there is a transition point where, first of all, I almost threw up when he lifts Gage out and his head goes to his mid-back. And then I remembered, oh yeah, his bones are gone. It pulverized his skeleton. And he wraps him up and it goes, Gage, the canvas, Gage. And it's the moments where he has to throw it on that roof and throw it anytime.
Wow,
it was
nice.
just a small thing, but I fucking loved it.
Good catch.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. That's really
that grave robbing that scene still made me feel insane.
It's upsetting.
Yeah.
That really goes with one of my favorite little short passages in the book is right at the beginning of part 2, where Lewis is talking about how much darkness a human mind can take before slipping over into madness, which is the human brain scares the ever living shit out of me. And that, like, how do you know when things have gotten out of control and that you have completely lost it? And it's just a really cool piece of writing. And that thing that you just brought up, it kind of feeds into that of like, this is one little piece. At this point, every other thought Lewis has is, I'm going crazy. And that shows that, like, the little barricades that you put up against thoughts you can't have, like, I'm going to have to can't think that it's my son's body, so the canvas. Yeah, that's really cool.
Small psychological break. I want to address something. CM, you brought up a point as we're getting to the end of the story. Gage coming back and his conversation with Judd. We talked about it earlier, but Gage lets Judd know that all of his friends fucked Norma in the ass, and you, stood by that in the outro.
I did.
You did. Yeah. And part 3, you made a bold statement that the Wendigo said about Norma is true, because women can be stony too. Like,
I see
and
it.
also in the episode prior, you said sometimes you need some strange.
What? Why?
We have a good podcast, y'all.
Good podcast.
Why does hearing things I've said make me sound like the guy on the podcast?
So I want to circle back because we've discussed that the Wendigo knows things. Do we think now there is any truth to Norma
Yes,
having
I think
that
it tells the
secret?
truth.
Yeah.
Because I think it tells the worst. Because once it possesses people, we see that it knows things. I think it can lie, but I don't think it has to. And I think that's part of the darkness of this story and grief. Grief is also confronting the ugliness of being human.
Yeah, and Judd says, it only wants to focus on the bad things.
Mhm.
And sure, we all did bad stuff, but we're humans and there's much more to us than the worst thing we ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Norman liked to get freaky.
I'm on board. I mean, if
Also, if it only wants to talk about the bad things, maybe she did butt stuff one time.
I was going to say, yeah, it exaggerated, I'm sure.
Yeah.
he said they each did it. Each of his friends
One
gotta
time.
turn one time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exaggerating because I think it'd be hard to keep that many men quiet about your butthole.
Yeah, they're fucking going around talking about the magic cemetery all the time.
That's
They're not going to be
Yeah,
like,
they can keep a secret.
check this
Shit.
out. Guess what I did Friday night?
There was nothing magic about it, I guess.
Oh.
Oh, Norma. Wow, you
This is so
Quit throwing
disrespectful of
shade
the
at that
dead.
old
It
lady.
really is. We really took our
She
shots.
has a magic butthole. Okay? I'm doubling down on.
I will also say I did not write the context of this note, but I said, Eve, you asked if I've ever been eaten by my child. That stance is another thing that has changed for me in the course of the 5 years since we filmed the show. Because my daughter has bitten me several
Probably
times.
when Gage is mowing down on Rachel.
Yeah. Fuck. The makeup of Judd's lower lip being bitten off.
Yeah, I remember we talked a lot about Pascal's makeup, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, yeah,
God, it's
Judd.
a fucking good movie.
Yeah.
What the fuck's wrong with people? It's a good ass movie.
Speaking of the movie, I've written down all of our answers
Okay.
when we talked about this last time. What was your favorite moment from the movie?
I really like the part where the car crashes into the back of that truck and all the potatoes fall on them. That part's awesome.
Mine's, I think, Gage dying for the second time when he's like,
No fair.
yeah, because it's just such a, it's such a weird way to
Mhm.
end a scene like that because you're expecting something crazy and huge, and he just says something so childlike in that moment,
Yeah,
and it's kind of soul crushing.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so hard to choose. The reveal of Gage as Oz the Great and Terrible. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
The costume, the little top hat. It's like
that painting
the
and that outfit
painting
upsets me.
is so creepy. And the director said that painting was made for the movie, but it was inspired by in like the 18th century or whatever. Because child mortality was so high, people would have portraits made to remember their children who have died by dressing up their child
Wow.
after their death and having the portraits painted.
That's
It
why
makes
that's so
sense.
creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very scary.
Oh, now I want one.
No.
I would never be able to. I mean, of the movie.
Oh, yeah,
not
of
her
print of the movie.
God.
Every scene with church. I don't know where they found the most photogenic cat in the entire fucking world. 7 of the most photogenic cats because it's 7 different cats.
Those cats did a good job.
Yeah. And the way they shoot it, and when it's supposed to be scary, it's a fucking scary looking cat.
I think it's easier to work with cats than dogs sometimes for that reason, because think about how many movies you see where it's like this angry dog and you're like, his tail is wagging. He's so happy. This isn't scary at all.
What a good boy. He's having so much fun.
Yeah.
I will say that your last answer, CM, was the additional use of Victor Pascal. And Eve, the car rental scene.
Oh, yeah, that's such a weird scene. I do like that she's going to rent a car and they're like, no, we don't have any cars. And it cuts over and Victor's just standing there all chill. He's like, what about this one?
Okay.
Weird.
If the power of the Wendigo, the burial ground, is responsible for all of this, but we have Victor Pascal, who's in theory a detached spirit who's trying to help Lewis because he was with him when he died and tried to help him. So, like, that's not is the power of those things what keeps Victor's spirit here, or is this like
It's one of the things I like so much about the book is how little that is explored.
Yeah.
I love that in the book the whole Victor Pascal thing is not explained. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't seem connected to the lore of the place. It is just, there's a ghost.
I mean, I guess if there can be a Wendigo, there can be a ghost.
Yeah. It just adds to that. Before we were recording the podcast, CM and I, we were talking about our feelings about the afterlife and stuff. I love that this feels like whatever happens after death is so beyond human understanding that the characters don't really even bother. They're like, I don't know. There's ghosts. People come back from the dead. Why? It doesn't matter. These are just forces of nature that are happening to these people. I think it's really cool.
That is cool. Yeah, for thinking of a ghost coming back as a force of nature is cool.
Yeah.
I like that idea, the way I wish it was done in the movie, because I enjoyed Victor the first time we watched the movie more than I did the second time.
I agree.
And it's
just like a tad bit too much.
Only because using Victor in the way the movie does makes him feel like a servant of the white because he's so adamant about his mission. Whereas I feel like, granted, we don't get these instances because Ellie is the one who gets all the interaction with Pascal. But I feel like there'd be more desperation. I feel like that for whatever reason, that spirit of Victor Pascal wanting to truly do something good for the man that tried to save him, being desperate, I guess, fighting against this fate. And I feel like the way I agree with what you said, Seema, about the levity he provides being fucking necessary. But it's small things like when he is in the semi and she says something like, it'll be all right. And he's like, I'm not so sure. And it closes like he's disconnected from it. But then he's yelling, no!
Yeah, they make it a little silly sometimes in the movie. Could have cut a couple of those out, and then it would have been,
I feel like they didn't give that ghost motivation.
That's a fair
actor.
criticism. Yeah. The actor did great. Oh, the actress playing Ellie.
Yes.
In that scene where she's crying and
she's so good.
And they don't do this in the movie. In the book, she has a fever and ends up going to the emergency room, but she looks feverish.
Yeah, she does. How'd you feel about the ending this time around? Knowing the ambiguous ending was coming.
I mean,
they don't make it ambiguous in the in the movie, it's not ambiguous, but yeah, I love the book where it's like, who knows what his fate is.
I think the ending of Pet Sematary is one of the best endings Stephen King has ever written. I think it's perfect. I think it is desperately sad and scary. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. God, this is a good fucking book. This might be my favorite book, like, honestly.
Now, I have some trivia I'd like to throw your way. Do either of you recall who was the sponsor for our Pet Sematary series?
Wait, this isn't Pet Sematary trivia?
It's about our show.
Is this Derry Public Radio trivia? This is going to be even worse.
You were there.
Oh, no.
That's the best part about trivia where you were there.
Manscaped?
Was that right? That was
not correct.
That was gonna be my guess.
Okay.
Was it Audible?
No, it was DT Fishboat. The $1 producer project was our sponsor for that.
Everyone follow DT Fishboat.
Yeah.
He's been streaming on Twitch every day.
69 days in a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna start with CM and we're gonna alternate just because I want to see how this goes. What are the names of our 4 episodes covering Pet Sematary?
Oh, there's
CM, what's the name of one of them?
Who's the baby's mama?
That is correct.
Oh, there's no way in hell I know one of these.
You said one earlier.
Potato Accident?
That is correct.
Okay.
CM.
I do not remember it. I only remember those 2.
Fuck.
For the win.
I don't listen to our
this is a
show. You know
competition.
this.
I'm looking at my notes on something else.
On the Wendigo.
I'm astounded I rememred one of them. Honestly. What was the one you said? I forget.
Who's the baby's mama?
Who's the baby? Yeah, I got nothing.
All right. Who's the baby's mama? Who said it?
I have no clue.
There's only 3 of us.
I know who said it.
You?
No, it was CM.
Oh, okay.
Episode 2 was titled "I Regret That."
Okay.
I feel like
for points, CM is the one who said,
that's what
"I regret
thought.
that." Eve, why did she say "I regret that"?
It was probably something sexual.
Yeah, did she say boner or something?
It was in response to something you said, because you said Oz the Great and Terrible, and she said, "Say it right." And then you said it like a pouty
an ooh voice,
Yeah.
the way it should be said. Oz the Great and Terrible.
I still regret that.
And episode 3 was titled Nature Club.
Nature club.
Little God Swampa, you thought it was like a nature club. Like
I said that?
like the club,
Okay.
yeah. Now, to close things out, I've decided to try something new.
What could it possibly be?
I've been flying under the radar about it. I keep playing my cards pretty close to the vest. I decided to do a Mad Libs for a scene. The scene that when I listened to us talk about it, we spent so much time discussing how fucking horrifying and mind-breaking it was.
What?
But I'm gonna read that scene in the style of Mad Libs.
Okay.
All right. The slime hit him first, and Stephen King recoiled, grinding. He hung on the edge of the spaghetti house, flying hard, and just when he thought he had his eyeball under control, his entire big, tasteless boat came up in a spurt. He flew up the side of the spaghetti house and then put his eyeball against the kite, barfing. At last, the rabbit passed. Eyeballs clamped together, he took the Nintendo GameCube out of his ankle and spanked it down into the open bowl of Captain Crunch. A deep butt that was very nearly horny stole over him. It was the sort of happy feeling usually reserved for the worst books. The ones you can barely remember spinning. Anna's solar plexus was gone.
What is happening?
Can you read the part about his hard boat coming up? Big tasteless boat is how I'm going to describe boners from now on.
Play the sting. Big tasteless boat dog.
Okay, what is this? I'm so like I can't even focus on
the Anna's solar plexus is gone. Is Gage's head is gone. It is him opening the coffin for the first
well, I'm
time.
glad I put spaghetti in there.
Stephen King gripped hard onto the side of the spaghetti house.
I like ours better.
Yeah. Ours had a butt that makes you horny.
Very nearly horny.
Very nearly. And a spurting boat.
And a big tasteless boat. A big tasteless boat spurt. Shall we rate it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any surprises here.
No.
What were our ratings the first time?
All 5s.
I don't think that's changing.
I don't
5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts. I'd go higher if I could.
5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
And coming soon, our entire Mad Libbed version of Pet Sematary.
So join us next time where we will be covering Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. For Joshua Kahn and Eve Gatto, I'm CM Alexander, reminding you, sometimes dead is better. Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to Pet Cemetery Revisited. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, let us know your thoughts on Facebook or Instagram at Derry Public Radio or X at Derry Public. You can also email us at derrypublicradio@gmail.com or chat with us and other Stephen King and horror fans in our Discord. The link for that is in the show notes. Don't forget to check out our Etsy store for merchandise. Search etsy.com/derrypublicradio and our Patreon page for bonus episodes at the $5 and up tier. That's patreon.com/derrypublicradio. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.